A faked death is the act of an individual purposely deceiving other people into believing they are dead when the person is in fact very much alive, as we saw in this week's episode, Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts. Laura, also known as Sarah, faked her death to escape her emotionally, physically, and sexually abusive husband, Martin, and for good reason. I mean, that guy sucked, am I right? To her advantage, Laura timed and perfectly faked her death to coincide with a boating accident wherein she fell out of the boat, bravely swam ashore with a light she had broken earlier, and grabbed her bug out bag to get away from her abusive husband, who, by the way, was awful. Lucky for Laura, she faked her death in an age where it was still relatively easy to do so. Today, advancements in technology simply make it increasingly difficult to just disappear. For example, credit card purchases, social media, and mobile phones, among many of the other technologies we rely on every day, have made it increasingly more difficult to make a clean break with a past identity. The most common motivations into why people fake a death is money, financial problems, or a need to escape an abusive relationship, as we saw Laura do. People who fake their own deaths often do so by pretending to drown because it provides a plausible reason for the absence of a body. However, as forensic scientists have learned, drowned bodies usually appear within a few days of a death, and when no body appears, a fake death is suspected. And we certainly saw Martin have his suspicions and then have them confirmed. Would you believe that basically for as long as human beings have existed, this practice dates all the way back to the 1st century when Yohanan ben Zakkai faked his death to escape from the Roman army in 70 BC. More recently, Ryan Borgwart, 45, vanished on August 12, 2024 during a solo fishing trip. Police initially thought he had drowned and searched for his body for 54 days before finding digital evidence that led them to suspect he had fled to Eastern Europe. Police say that after sinking his kayak and mobile phone in the lake, he paddled a small child bike to shore where he had stashed an e-bike. He took this e-bike and cycled to Madison, Wisconsin, then boarded a bus to Detroit, got on a plane, and then flew to Eastern Europe. I wonder if there's some sort of pattern. Now, sadly, he left behind 3 children and a wife. In the days before his departure, authorities found he had taken out a $375,000 life insurance policy, transferred funds to a foreign bank account, photographed his new passport, and altered his email address. Oh, and by the way, he had been in contact online with a woman in Uzbekistan. The last known communication from Mr. Borgwart was a 24-second video he sent to authorities. Quote, "Good evening, it's Ryan Borgwart. Today is November 11th. It is approximately 10 a.m. by you guys. I'm in my apartment. I am safe, secure, no problem. I hope this works." When and if he returns to the States, authorities say Mr. Borgwart owes them $40,000 for the cost of their search and could be charged with obstruction of the investigation into his disappearance. Okay, in an even wilder story, Aubrey Lee Price went from a devout Christian minister to a schemer who wiped out many of his clients' life savings. Price got involved in an investment business to initially fund his overseas missions. And to this end, he started his own company, PFG. 2009, unbeknownst to his clients, Price began gambling with their money. He would later falsify documents to hide those transactions, for example, sending them false statements showing they were making these buckets of money. The following year, he convinced 40 of his best clients to invest in a troubled Georgia bank. Price raised $10 million from his clients, then bank employees and residents put in an additional $4 million. Because of this, Price was seen as a hero for helping to keep this small community bank afloat. But in 2011, Price realized the bank could not be turned around and that his investors stood to lose, quote, a lot of money. I'm guessing upwards of $14 million. He convinced bank officials to use some of the institution's fund to invest in U.S. securities and was given permission to wire $5 million to an account he created with a well-known investment firm. Everyone believed Price was on the up and up. He had investors, a solid track record, and there was no reason anyone would doubt his ability or honesty. Remember, he's still a minister at this point. He eventually gained access to more than $21 million and lost $16 million through risky investments, all the while telling the bank and his investors that the money was being used to purchase securities. It was the classic Ponzi scheme. In the end, Price's deception resulted in the bank's failure and losses of more than $70 million. In 2012, when he knew his house of financial cards was about to crumble, he faked his death on a boat in Key West, Florida, and fled to Mexico, where he grew and sold marijuana and other drugs, and sometimes served as a bodyguard for prostitutes. A random and routine traffic stop in Georgia resulted in his arrest on New Year's Eve in 2013, nearly 18 months after his disappearance. He went from a clean-cut preacher to an investment advisor to a weed grower and prostitute escort. Like any good con man, he needed his investors to believe what he was saying was true, but in the end, his words did not match his actions. And finally, John Darwin drowned while canoeing in the North Sea in 2002. In reality, John and his wife were looking for a life insurance payout. Years later, in 2007, Darwin turned up in a London police station pretending to have amnesia. Unfortunately for him, someone found a photo of the couple in Panama where they were looking to buy property. The Darwins were sentenced to 6 years in prison for fraud and other related charges. Anne ended up divorcing John and wrote a book about her experience called Out of My Depth. Now, getting back to Laura, she had the best of intentions to get away from Martin and start a new life. She left all personal effects behind and took only the cash and clothes she needed to help start over. It is unlikely that, given the circumstances of her case and the eyewitness account of Ben, her neighbor, who eventually becomes her boyfriend, that Laura will face any criminal or civil repercussions, and she gets to go back to using her driver's license, passport, and ID. So here's to Ben and Laura living their best life together, and go ahead and throw a rock at the subscribe button so you never miss a thing. We appreciate our listeners, our supporters, viewers, and everything great about the year 2024. Here's to another great year of content. Stay safe, and we will see you soon.